Hey everybody, welcome to the A7S III unboxing. Here we are with the camera, finally. Let's flip it around and see what's in the box. When you first open it up, you got your warranties, your instructions, all that good stuff, which we'll toss to the side for now. And then the Tough Express cards, very important, we'll talk about in a bit. Then you got your HDMI clamp, no need for a cage. You got USB-C. Opening it up further, we got the strap. I rarely use it, but it's nice to have. And down here, we got the long-awaited A7S III. We'll leave the best for last. Here we have one of the NPFC 100 higher capacity Sony batteries and the charger that comes with it. Hey, they gave us a cable. Now you don't have to balance your charger on the wall. And finally, the best part of the unboxing. Let's take this camera out of its sleeve and see what it looks like. This is what we're talking about today. The A7S III finally came, finally unboxed. It's been a long time waiting for this. Now the A7S III highlights, we got the UHD 4K 422 10-bit internal. Obviously we got to mention the 16-bit output via HDMI. We got supposedly better low light. I haven't tested it yet. I just unboxed it. Also got to talk about the autofocus. As we know, A7S II was absolute. It was so bad. But now we got 759 focus points compared to the 169 on the A7S II, which was so bad. And we got no recording limit, which is huge, huge. We got some overheating limits. Obviously, we got 4K 60. In CF Express, it lasts about an hour. And then we got 4K 120, which gives you about 30 minutes before it overheats. But otherwise, no actual timing limit. So if you manage to keep this little guy cool, you can shoot indefinitely. Huge, huge, huge change. We've been waiting for the flippy screen for so long. I love it. It's great. But I gotta mention, everyone's been complaining about the A7S II tilt out screen, which, I grew to like. It had the metal brackets, so right here on the back, right here, it had two brackets on the back. The screen came out tilting and they were metal. The screen felt kind of nice. It was just the edges of it and the metal brackets on the back made it feel really sturdy. I get why they use plastic here. It just is what it is with these hinges, but it's different. I can't say I like it more. It just feels less sturdy, in my opinion. And also, if you can see this, it's not completely straight, which I'm either thinking it's a hinge thing. See, it does go back all the way, but naturally doesn't stay up. I'm being picky right now, mostly because I have one of the few first batches in Canada, and I'm aware that, like with the A7S II I had, the first batches weren't that good. There were some issues, there were some lemons. There was a problem with the EVF too. There's a little piece of dirt stuck between the glass, unfortunately, so I'm probably gonna have to take this one back and get a different one. It is the first batch, it is what it is, but the camera is nonetheless exciting. Other than the tilt screen, the screen itself is an upgrade, kind of. It's 17% higher resolution compared to the A7S II, so it does give us a little bit of a better resolution. It's not bigger though, so the size isn't that big, so it's not gonna make that big of a difference. You're probably still gonna need an external monitor if you want to see what you're doing properly. And it's equally glossy. It doesn't change anything. I took it outside for a bit. The visibility is about the same, so nothing improved on that side. It would have been nice to get an OLED screen. It's still an LCD panel. They did put an OLED in the EVF, which I thought was funny because, it is a hybrid camera, but above all, it's a video camera. So you would think that the better screen would go on the actual, usable panel that videographers would use. But the better screen went in the EVF. And I personally, for the 5 years I used the A7S, used the EVF maybe 5 times, 6 times. I didn't really take pictures. Even for the time lapse, I use a screen. I want to see what I'm doing, or I use a Shinobi or an Atomos Ninja. Not so much the actual EVF, which granted is very nice. It's a huge improvement. It looks great, but I probably won't use it, and neither will you if you're a videographer. That's the likelihood. Now, the buttons is the other big upgrade. So if any of you have had the A7S II, that silly record button right here is now gone. Now we got it up here. I had on my A7S II the record button set as a custom key up here, so not a huge issue. You can get around it with the custom key. Now they switched the custom key here for the record button, and we still have a custom key. So again, not a huge issue, but it's nice not to have the recording button on the side and have it where it's supposed to be. The buttons do feel much nicer, just a feeling of pressing them, and the wheel here is much bigger and it feels easier to use. Same with the clicks. I get why they put this here. The A7R4 has it. Some people like it. I personally probably won't use it. Like it's kind of hard to flick. It sticks a little bit. So I'll probably end up using the wheel and click it most of the time, or I'll use a touchscreen on the LCD. Did I forget to mention it's a touchscreen? That's a huge improvement too. It's nice to use a touchscreen and not have to actually go through the menu with the scrolly wheel. But sometimes the menu, because of the new layout, is a bit small. I got kind of a big hand, big fingers, so for me it's a bit difficult to use a touchscreen, so I prefer the scrolly wheel and the buttons. But you know, to each his own. It's still a good upgrade. It's nice to have. Battery size, that's where the A7S III shines. A7S II, huge complaints about the batteries. I had 7 of them. Really great. You know, honestly, they lasted me a good day's shoot. I didn't have that many problems. I just turned off the camera, and if I was doing an interview, I had different setups, which I'll talk about in a second. A7S III has 2,000 some milliamp hours. A7S II had about 1,000. So effectively double the capacity for the battery. That doesn't mean exactly double the actual shooting time because of the improvements on the processor, the stabilization, and all the other features, especially the processor with the recording capabilities on this camera. It's obviously going to draw more power. You're still going to get about 90 minutes or so of recording time, depending on what format you're at, with the NPF-Z100 battery on the Sony. So it's quite a bit different compared to the NPF-W50 of the A7S II, which I have right here. So size comparison, quite a bit different. It is nice to have a bigger battery. It's not that much heavier. I mean, it's decent, but it doesn't add a lot of weight to it, which is nice. It is overall a bigger body. It's about 5 millimeters thicker, I would say. Probably has to do with the cooling, with the overheating. Supposedly it doesn't have as much of an issue. A7S II, in my opinion, didn't have as much of an issue, or maybe I got lucky with my model. I never overheated. I had one instance in the Grand Canyon. It was 40 degrees Celsius. It was really hot. The sun was bright, shining on the camera. I was doing a time lapse and it overheated, but that happened once. Otherwise, I never had issues really. And if you run an external power supply to the camera, you're gonna have even less issues. In the case of this camera, I would probably say keep the screen open if you can. That will limit the heat that gets stuck between the screen and the camera. So that gives you maybe a little bit better cooling. Probably gives you a couple more minutes of recording. Now, talking about ports, I gotta talk about the full HDMI Type A on this A7S III. It's a huge upgrade. That micro HDMI on the previous A7S II was a pain. So you can see how small the connector is. It was very prone to breaking. To take advantage of the HDMI connection here, you will need an HDMI 2 or 2.1 cable. They're fairly cheap. I bought mine for about 20 bucks at Canada Computers. I'm in Canada. And with that, you can use an Atomos Ninja V. Now you can output 16-bit footage, 4K 60 DCI 16-bit footage. But you will need the HDMI 2.1. Now the Atomos Ninja V doesn't record in 16-bit RAW. What it does is it actually takes that and it compresses it into 12-bit, which they say is the exact same thing. They say that you don't see the difference between the 16-bit and the 12-bit compressed that they do, and you'll get 4K 60 in 12-bit. What's interesting about the USB-C connection is that it's a USB 3.2 Gen 1 connection. Now what that means is that it gives you 5 gigabits a second transfer speeds. Now, where I'm going with this is that currently, if you want to record at the highest data rate possible on this camera, that's the 4K 60 all-I 10-bit 422 footage, it requires 1200 megabits a second. For that, you need the CF Express Type A card from Sony, which is a lot of money. It's 398 USD currently, or about 519 Canadian. That's a lot of money. If you know of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K, you know it can record by USB-C directly to an SSD, which is really nice and cost effective. Now this USB-C connection can support up to a bit over 4000 megabits a second, so above and beyond what the requirement is for the top footage you can get out of this camera. I really hope that Sony comes out with an update so we can actually use the USB-C to connect an SSD and record directly to it. That would actually put it in the same range as the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. And that's a wrap for the A7S III unboxing and first impressions. Obviously, it's exactly what I thought it would be. It's really impressive. Hopefully the footage is going to be as impressive. I'll find out in the next couple weeks. In the meantime, subscribe, leave a like. Let me know in the comments if you're getting the new camera, or if you're sticking to the A7S II, or what else you're shooting with and how it stacks up. I'll see you next time.